I avoided telling this story for a long time, because every time I begin, I'm reminded of how many chances we had to leave and how many reasons we found not to. From the outside, it probably sounds irresponsible. From the inside, it felt unavoidable. Like standing in water that rises so slowly, you only realize how deep it is when it reaches your throat. When my wife and I moved into the apartment, we signed a 3-year lease. The rent was lower than anything else we could afford in that part of the city, and the landlord required a substantial security deposit along with penalties for early termination. At the time, it felt like a necessary compromise. We told ourselves we were buying stability. The building itself was old but solid. The walls were thick, and once the door was closed, outside noise barely reached us. On our first night, my wife commented on how quiet it was. She wasn't afraid. She sounded surprised. I told her it was probably good construction, and for the first few days, that explanation held. The apartment felt sealed off from the city. At first, we liked that. The first strange thing happened several weeks after we moved in. Late one night, my wife shifted beside me in bed and whispered my name. She asked if I could hear something. At first, I couldn't. Then I focused, and beneath the sound of our breathing, I noticed something faint coming from inside the wall behind our bed. It sounded like something being dragged slowly across a rough surface, stopping and starting, as if whatever was making the sound was testing the space. When I moved, the sound stopped. We lay there listening for a long time. Nothing else happened. We told ourselves it was the building settling or pipes expanding somewhere inside the wall. Old buildings made noise. That explanation was easy to accept. The next night, the sound returned. This time it lasted longer and didn't come from one fixed spot. It moved along the wall in a steady line, close enough that when I leaned toward it, I could feel a faint vibration through the plaster. I pressed my palm flat against the wall, expecting to feel pipes or wiring. The moment my hand touched the surface, the sound stopped completely. That bothered me more than the sound itself. Over the next few nights, patterns formed. The sound never happened during the day. It never happened when friends were over. It only started after midnight, and it always came from whichever wall was closest to us. If we moved from the bedroom to the living room, the sound didn't follow immediately. It waited. Then it began again from the wall nearest to where we had settled. We talked about leaving, but the lease always came up. Losing the deposit and paying penalties would have wiped out our savings. At that point, everything still felt strange, but not dangerous. One evening, while we were sitting in the living room, the sound started again from the wall behind the couch. It had been going on for several minutes when my wife stood and stepped closer. She tapped the wall lightly with her knuckles 3 times without thinking. The sound stopped instantly. We waited. After a short pause, 3 taps came back from inside the wall, matching her rhythm exactly. The spacing was identical. The delay was identical. My wife laughed nervously and said it was probably pipes. I pressed my ear against the wall. Something inside shifted slowly and deliberately, and the sound had texture to it, like fabric or skin dragging across wood. My wife backed away, twisting the hem of her sweater in her fingers, and whispered that it wasn't pipes. "Pipes don't answer," she said. A damp chill seeped through the plaster, not like cold air, but like something being pushed out. The taps didn't happen again that night. When we tried knocking a second time, the wall stayed silent. Eventually, we went to bed, but I kept my palm flat against the headboard, feeling for vibrations. Around 3 in the morning, I woke to a muffled clicking sound, like fingernails tapping porcelain. It wasn't coming from the wall. It was coming from inside the mattress. I rolled off the bed so fast I caught my ankle on the sheets and hit the floor hard. My wife startled awake, grabbing my arm as I scrambled upright. The clicking stopped immediately. We stood there, breathing too loud, staring at the mattress. After a long stretch of silence, my wife whispered that we were exhausted, that we were hearing things. We both knew we weren't. The next morning, I pulled the mattress off the bed frame and found nothing. No scratches, no holes. Just the faint imprint of our bodies pressed into the foam. My wife watched from the doorway, arms crossed tight over her chest. She suggested it might have been a mouse, but her voice didn't carry much conviction. We called the landlord. He arrived within the hour, a wiry man in his 60s who smelled of mothballs and glanced at the walls as if he didn't like standing too close to them. He listened, knocked twice on the bedroom wall, and shrugged. Old buildings made strange sounds, he said. We watched too many movies. He left without checking the pipes. That night, we slept on the couch. Sometime after 2, I felt the cushion beneath me compress slowly, deliberately, as if someone had sat down beside us. It wasn't a creak or a shift. It was weight. My wife's fingers dug into my thigh. Neither of us turned to look. The pressure remained for several seconds before easing away. Almost immediately, scratching started inside the walls again, this time from more than one direction. One wall, then another, then directly beneath the floorboards below the couch. The sounds weren't frantic. They were careful. My wife whispered that it was mapping us. The realization landed heavily. The sounds had never been random. They had been learning where we were. The next morning, handprints appeared in the condensation on the bathroom mirror. They were too large to be hers and too small to be mine, pressed outward as if someone had been inside the cabinet. When I opened it, a clump of dark hair fell into the sink, tangled around something hard that might have been a tooth. My wife screamed. By noon, we packed 2 suitcases. The lease no longer mattered. When I tried to open the front door, the deadbolt clicked uselessly. I hadn't locked it. Through the peephole, the hallway stretched empty under flickering lights. The doorknob was warm beneath my palm, pulsing faintly. My wife pulled me back and told me to try the fire escape. The bedroom window wouldn't open. Layers of old paint had fused the frame shut, the kind of careless sealing landlords do when no one expects a window to be used. When I forced a screwdriver into the seam, a dark liquid seeped out and clung to the metal. Behind us, the closet door creaked open a few inches. My wife didn't notice the movement, but I did. Something pale pressed slowly into the gap, stretching the darkness around it. Fingers emerged next. Too long, jointed wrong, bending in segments like insect legs as they curled around the edge of the doorframe. They didn't grab. They tested, tightening and loosening, as if learning the shape of the space. I grabbed my wife's wrist and pulled her toward the bathroom without a word. She tried to protest, confused by the sudden force, but the urgency in my grip cut it short. I didn't look back. We tried the bathroom. The door resisted before giving way with a wet crack. The air inside smelled like a flooded basement. The mirror was gone. Not shattered, just missing. The bathroom window was smaller than I remembered, barely wide enough for one person at a time. I smashed the remaining glass with the fire extinguisher, and cold night air rushed in, sharp and clean compared to the rot behind us. The alley below looked impossibly far away, the dumpsters clustered together like dark shapes waiting to break bones. My wife didn't hesitate. She climbed onto the sink, gripping the frame with shaking hands. I steadied her by the waist and told her to go. She looked back at me once, her face pale, eyes wide, then forced herself through the opening. I heard her land, hard but alive. "Jump!" she shouted up at me. "Now!" I climbed after her, pushing my shoulders through the window frame. The plaster scraped my ribs as I wriggled forward. For a moment, I thought I was stuck, my hips wedged awkwardly against the sill. Then I felt myself sliding free. That was when something grabbed me. Hands closed around my legs from inside the bathroom. Not one, several. Their grip was wet and unnaturally strong, fingers digging into my calves and ankles, bending where joints shouldn't bend. I kicked wildly, scraping my knuckles against the brick outside as I tried to pull myself forward. Below me, my wife screamed my name. For a split second, I thought I could still make it. My torso was already outside, my chest pressed against the cold wall. I could feel the open air on my face. Then the hands tightened. I saw them clearly then. Pale, slick, layered over one another as they reached out of the darkness inside the apartment. The skin was mottled and stretched too thin. The nails were thick and cracked, some broken down to the quick. More fingers emerged, crowding over each other, desperate, clumsy, as if they didn't quite understand how bodies were supposed to work. They pulled. My grip slipped. My ribs slammed against the sill as I was dragged backward. I reached down, stretching for my wife, but the distance widened too fast. Her hands flailed uselessly in the air as I was hauled inside. The last thing I saw was her face, frozen in disbelief, as the window frame filled my vision and the darkness closed around me. After that, everything I knew about what happened came from her. She told the police I slipped. She said I lost my grip and fell back inside before she could reach me. She repeated it until it sounded solid enough to stand on. There were no signs of a struggle when they searched the apartment. The broken bathroom window was explained away. The cracks in the wall were blamed on age. The landlord insisted the place had always been like that. They never found my body. She left the city less than a month later. I watched her pack what little she kept. I watched her lock the door for the last time and hesitate just for a second, as if she felt something behind her. She didn't turn around. I wanted to follow her. I couldn't. The building doesn't let me go far. It never did. I can move through the rooms now without opening doors. I can stand where the wall once split open and feel where it still breathes, slow and patient. Sometimes I hear it working, even when it's quiet, continuing whatever it was trying to finish. She promised she would never come back. I believe her. I'm still waiting for her.